Okay, so are we ready? Okay, so we have three. Okay, I'm going to admit all of them. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, Deborah. How are you?
I am great.
Good.
You can definitely see from my background that it is the book cover of Is the World Round Like a Pizza, which
Oh,
is doing its free promotional launch right now on Amazon, and it will be doing the public launch next week. But right now it's like free public, free to the launch team, and it is like number 4 in children's science and technology.
Deborah,
I
I am so proud of you.
see, I finally did it.
Way to go. Deborah has been working on this story for many years, and she has been just telling me about the process of publishing this. And oh my gosh, congratulations, Deborah. That's
Thank
wonderful.
you. And I don't think I said last time that I live in Cedar Woolley, Washington, which is about maybe 60 miles from the Canadian border.
Oh, wow. That is so great. Congratulations. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, is Jackie in the house?
Jackie's in the house.
Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Good to see everybody. All right.
Congratulations, Deborah.
Thank you.
Well, I'm
We're
glad
here
you all-
because of you, Jackie. This was your idea to do a part 2. See, we
Yes.
listened.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wow. Gosh. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Who else do we have? Let's see. Yeah, we're probably going to get started in just a few minutes. We have other people signed up, but we'll just kind of go in and get started as quickly as possible. So
See, we have Roxana here too. You see?
let's see. Okay, I think her is her audio off. There's an X to the audio, Paul.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
They have to unmute themselves. You can't do that.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Hi,
Yeah.
Roxana.
I giggle a lot, so you know, trying to keep
Oh,
it
that's
down.
okay. That's
I'm
okay.
distracted.
All right. So
I've drawn like I did 2 of the same pictures, and I'm on my 3rd one, so I'm really excited.
Nice.
Oh,
Good job.
that
Hey.
is excellent. Okay. All right. So we're going to be getting started. So before I just do a recap of what we did for the first lesson, does anybody have any questions based on just what we did 2 weeks ago?
I don't have a question, but I want to tell you that it seems obvious how to use watercolor pencils, but I had some and I didn't know how, and I've been using them and I'm loving them. Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, that's great. Yeah, so essentially, class, what we did was, for the workshop is, I showed you, the basic techniques of what is possible with watercolor. I explained the different kinds of watercolor that you can use. There's the watercolor tubes, there's the watercolor pencils, there's the watercolor cakes and all of that good stuff. So I'll just kind of, if any of you have any, other questions, as far as those go, I'll definitely be here to answer them, for you. But I mean, the essential thing is once you understand that there's so many different ways to approach watercolor, the other very, crucial thing with watercolor painting is just having an adequate setup. As I said, if you're right-handed, you want to have all of your equipment on your right side so it's easy access to the paint, to the water, to the paper. Okay. I am left-handed, so you're going to be seeing me do a lot of work, just from the left side onto the paper. But it also just makes the process of painting much more comfortable. I mean, you want to paint and make art in a very comfortable setting. You know, you don't want to be spilling your water all over the place and just acting like a klutz like I am still. So, okay, so I'm going to turn the spotlight on to my painting that we left off on. I have not touched it since our last class. So we're just gonna basically just pick up where we left off from. But I'm gonna start working, and as I work and talk, if any of you have any questions or anything, I'm here to answer any and all questions. So I'm going to flip over here. Okay, Paul, how's that look?
You did it.
Okay.
This is also Zoom training day for Robert. So if
Yes,
I'm just here in the background for support if anything is needed, but you're doing great.
Yeah, okay. So let's see where I left off. Does anybody need a minute before I begin? Is everybody ready to go or? Okay. So basically where I left off, I'm actually gonna try and have the photo. Paul, do you think would it be advisable for me to have the photo reference in here or no?
It's up to you. Everyone should have it. I sent it out in the email. Is there anybody that doesn't have the photo? Because we could also send it to you through the chat also. That would be an easy way to give it to you. If anyone does not have the photo, unmute yourself and let me know and I can send it to you. But otherwise, I don't think you need, it's up to you, Robert, but you can't really see it too well, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, that's okay. So so basically I'm kind of just here, let me rephrase this. When I finish doing a painting, or when I finish working on a painting for a session, when I come back to the painting, whether it's a week or a day later, I like to just kind of, examine, where I left off and where I want to go. So right now, my priority is to just continue to get the entire image covered in paint. I'm not trying to finish anything. I'm not trying to make it super perfect or anything like that. I'm just trying to block everything in so I just have a solid foundation to build upon. Okay. So I'm just going to start with this tree right here, this big tree that's in the foreground. And let's see, I'm going to use my mop brush. This is my round mop brush that I was using last week. This is a number 6, really good paintbrush for holding a lot of water and a lot of paint. So I'm just going to first get my paintbrush wet and just mix the color that's similar. It doesn't have to be spot on to what you see in the photograph, just as long as it's something close to it in terms of how light or how dark to go. So it's basically on the light, it's on the yellow green side of the spectrum. So in order to get a yellow green, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a cadmium yellow. So just a nice bright yellow. I'm going to start with that color and I'm going to mix some of it onto a palette. And the other thing too, I'm actually using a combination of the watercolor tubes, the watercolor cakes, and I'll probably do some watercolor pencil in the end. So I'm using a mixture of all. So feel free to use whatever you want, whatever you have, whatever is gonna get the paint on the paper. So anyway, so I'm going to start with some cadmium yellow. And then I'm gonna gradually add some blue into that. And I already have some blue on my palette, so I'm just going to put some water in there and that will bring that watercolor to life, and then just mix it in with my yellow. I'm just going to start putting a wash down. So let's see what we got here. Let's see, I want to get a little bit more green. So okay, so here's a little trick. Like that dot right there, I don't want to use that color. So while it's wet, I'm just going to take my paper towel and just blot it off. So that's your eraser. So anyway, so to make it a little bit more green, I'm just going to add some more yellow to it. Well, that's better. Okay, so, and I'm just going to, like so, just block in that tree just with one color for right now. And remember to have your watercolor paper or your block or whatever you're painting on, just have it at a slight 45-degree angle. That will help prevent the water from puddling. And I'm just going to fill in this tree. Okay, so I basically have that tree blocked in. Now I'm going to give you a little quiz. So I want to paint the grass that is right next to this tree. So in order to do that, if I paint, what am I going to have to do in order to get just a solid color right next to something that's wet? You are to let that dry first, because what's going to happen if we don't let that dry?
You'll run in it.
Exactly. It's going to bleed. So if you want to put a clean color next to a clean color, you must wait for that to dry. Just give it a couple minutes, you know, and once that is dry, then you can work over there. So I'm just going to kind of take my time, and I'm going to mix another green just to get a color for that grass. I want it to be slightly lighter than that tree, just so the tree doesn't get lost. So I'm just going to take some more yellow. And if you're working on cold pressed paper, the drying time is very quick. It's not going to take that long for that to dry. The other thing that I would advise you on is, you know, when you're painting landscapes, especially if there's a lot of trees and stuff like that, you want to avoid having anything too on the yellow side, because especially if you have a color like yellow ochre, because then it will look like the trees or grass are dead. You don't want that. So you want to have, you know, at least, you know, you want to have everything be green or red or purple or whatever, just anything but dead. Okay, so I'm just going to come over here and just put a nice wash right where that grass is. I'm taking my time. That will just give the wet paint next to it just a little bit more time to dry. And yeah, it's doing exactly what I want it to. And remember, if you find yourself with a huge water bead after you've just put some paint down, what you can do is just take a damp, clean brush and just blot that bead right off of there and wipe it into your paper towel. That will help that. And so I'm going to take that same color and I'm going to actually go right behind this tree just to get some continuity happening here. Okay. Pretty happy with that. The other thing too that I want to say is if you see a color that's in several different areas of your reference or whatever, feel free to put that color everywhere you see that color. That will help kind of speed up the painting process a little bit. So for instance, like this grass that I just put down here, I also see that it's very evident in the foreground too. Pretty much the same color. It might be a little bit different, but it's essentially the same color. So I'm just going to go ahead while I'm in the neighborhood, go ahead and put that same grass color in the foreground. So. Yeah, so basically when you know, for your first layer of paint, whether it's a watercolor painting or an acrylic painting, for your first layer, you're just trying to block everything in just to get a general sense of the lights and the darks. You know, so don't feel like you have to go into it super precious. Consider the first layer of paint like your rough draft, as if you were writing a paper. You know, you're just kind of spilling your guts and getting everything out. And then once you have a rough draft, then that is the time to go back and start fine tuning and stuff like that. Because if you go in with super high expectations and just try and, you know, fine tune everything and just have this mindset of just wanting to get everything done in 5 seconds, that's just not really the most comfortable way to work, in my opinion. You want to just slowly, like I said last week, Paul, weasel your way to perfection.
Love it.
Paul, maybe we could do, if I ever do an animal watercolor painting class, I could show them how to paint a weasel.
I think that would be perfect. You should offer that next. How about next week?
Perfect. And I know several of you had questions about how to handle these flowers in the foreground, and we'll definitely get to that today for sure. So don't worry about that. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with what's going on here. So now there's still a little bit of grass over here where my finger is, and I'm just going to finish that, and then we'll move on to something else. That color is a little bit different than this color because I got a little bit too much blue in it, but I'm just going to go ahead and use it anyway. Trying to avoid the, I got some cast shadow shapes over here, and I'm just trying to avoid those because I want to deal with those with a whole different color. You know, this is actually a perfect time to do a little demonstration for you all. So you'll notice where I'm pointing. This was a layer that I put on in our first workshop together, and you can do all of you see that watercolor bloom that's happening right there?
Yeah.
That's going to happen, but what you want to do if you don't like blooms, if you're not a fan of the blooms, just wait for it to dry, and then you can go over with another layer. So I'm going to put on another coat just because somehow I got that bloom. I was probably talking and spit on it. I'm just kidding. And but I'm just going to put another layer, and that's going to help diminish a lot of those imperfections. So again, if your first layer of watercolor is not working, if you're getting streaks or if you get blooms or whatever, instead of continuing to add more and more and more watercolor, you don't want to do that. You want to wait for it to dry first, then proceed with another layer. That's gonna really just help smooth things out for you. So you can see that bloom is pretty much gone, and it's a little bit darker, which is fine for right now. Okay, so now I'm going to turn my attention to some of these really beautiful magenta, not the ones in the foreground, but some of these colors that like a pink, like a magenta kind of flower. I can't figure out what color that was. Anyway, so how I'm going to get that is just, if you want to get a nice pink, you can just get more, just add some water to some red, and you should be able to get something that is pretty close to pink. Here I'm using some alizarin crimson, which is a cool red, a red that has blue in it. And I'm just going to add a lot of water to it. That's going to lighten it up and just kind of give you that pink effect. Or if you have, there's a lot of different watercolor pencils that are an assortment of pinks. So feel free to use one of those if you want to. So just going to come in here and just start building some of the areas where the flowers are. Spots. And again, as far as the photo reference goes, don't feel like you have to, this isn't about photorealism. You don't have to copy the photo exactly the way it is. You want to capture the character of the stuff that you see in your own way. And, feel free to edit things out. I mean, there's stuff in this photo reference that I took out because it just didn't seem necessary, or it just seemed too complicated. You want to try and simplify whenever possible. So just kind of get what's important, And to be a little bit more creative, I'm going to take these flowers, and I'm actually going to put more flowers over here, because here in the photograph, it's just nothing but branches and leaves and stuff like that. But I think it would be more interesting just to have more of these flowers over here than just a plain gray road. Actually, this is a good time to do a little bit of a bleeding technique. So this time I'm intentionally wanting to do some bleeding. So I got some wet watercolor paint from the paint that I put down for these flowers. So I'm just going to take a little bit of a darker version of the green, just for some more foliage or whatever, and just go right next to that and just watch how these are bleeding. I think this is a good time to bleed. Remember the consistency of your watercolor. Try and use, in the beginning you want it to be relatively thin, but as the painting progresses, you want to think the consistency of whole milk. that is a pretty good consistency for watercolor. So if you're here, do a little bit there. Okay, so I'm going to leave that alone for right now. Before I return to these trees and all that stuff, I just want to resolve everything that's still white over here in paper. So I got a couple trees happening here. I'm just going to, let's see, and to push for a little color variation, I'm going to switch, I'm going to change my green just because you want to have a variety of greens or in colors. You know, I wouldn't want all of these to be the same, you know, green. I like to mix it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of, I have this sap green, which is essentially a dark olive kind of green. And I'm going to add some red to it. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to mute the color, because the complementary color to green is red. A complementary color is a color that sits across from the opposite color on the color wheel. And just for a little harmony, I'm just going to put some of that red into my green. But you want to be careful though, because if you put too much red into a green, it's going to go super, super brown. You want it to just, you just want a little dash of that. And already that's going way too brown. So I'm going to scrap that and I'm going to try it again. You know, mixing color, that's just one of those things that does take practice. It's just like basically learning how to mix recipes. It's a lot of trial and error. Eventually though, once you do understand how color works, it does become really fun. But it's just, but feel free to really just, you know, experiment with colors and just, you know, make mistakes and all that stuff on the palette. I mean, one of the things that I notice about a lot of students is, you know, I'll look at their palette and there's only like 3 colors happening on this huge surface of you know, and feel free to, I mean, that's what it's for. I mean, really use all the space that you have to mix colors, not just to get accurate ones, but to also experiment. Really use your palette to experiment and mix colors and have breakthroughs, make mistakes, do, you know, use the palette for everything. Okay, so I just put a little bit of red into that green this time. So it's kind of, it looks a little bit like a watermelon. And so I'm just going to paint in these individual trees that I drew in last week. Another one. Okay, so I'm going to let those dry. And I'm actually going to put a little bit more flour, some of these flowers right in front of these trees. And I'm actually okay with it blending because I think it would be kind of neat to get some of the blur happening here. Okay, I'm going to let that sit. And then for this little white patch back here, I think what I'm going to do is in the photo, there's this dark tree that I didn't actually put in, but I think I'm going to put a smaller tree that's very similar to what's going on in this photo, but it's going to be much smaller. And I'm going to make it a little bit darker than any of the other greens that I had. So if you want to make a dark green, you got to start with the dark color first. So in this case, if I wanted a dark green, I would start with my ultramarine blue first. Get a pile of this ultramarine blue on your palette. Then go ahead and just put little drops of yellow in there. That's going to keep it on the dark side. So if you want more greens that are more in the yellow green family, you want to start with a light color, which would be a yellow, and then add little drops of blue to get a yellow green. But if you want a dark green, start with a dark blue, then a tiny bit of yellow. I like that green that I put down. And so the other thing that I want to do is while I'm using this color, I'm going to just find other areas that I can make use to it. So I could probably put some of this dark green over here in the hills. My point for doing this is if you have one color, you want to try and get that color in another place on your image, because that way you're it won't be one isolated color. If you have that color, you know, in at least one more area in your painting, it's just going to create a little bit more harmony. It'll just tie it together a little bit better instead of just having an isolated color. So I'm just like a lot of these white spots that you see in here from last week, I'm just gonna, for the heck of it, go in here and just get some of the dark greens in here. And notice how I'm handling my brush. I'm being very expressive. I'm just kind of, you know, trying to get my brush to move in a million different directions just to express myself. And the other thing too is, you know, if you're trying to create texture, especially like foliage, you want to definitely just kind of be very liberal with your paintbrush and just kind of move it in the direction that you see things growing in. Okay, I'm going to stop right there, and then I'm going to come back to these trees, these two dark trees that you see. In the photo reference, I'm seeing some hints of violet happening back there, and I kind of like the idea of having some purples in, you know, because a lot of times when you're doing purple or when you're doing shadows, sometimes they read as purple, actually, especially in nature. If you look at a really green tree and you see the form shadow happening on the foliage, you will see a lot of subtle violets happening in there. So for violet, I'm just going to add, I'm going to make a new color. I'm going to take marine blue, and I'm going to add some alizarin crimson to it. That's going to create a violet, a really dark violet. And if you find that your color is too purple or too violet-y, There is one color that is very helpful in terms of toning down the color, and that is yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is a very versatile color in terms of just actually adding a little bit to that color. It will just desaturate the color. It will just kind of make it a duller version of that color.
So Robert,
Uh-huh.
so I have these big splotches.
Uh-huh. Let's see here.
And I would like to understand, I mean, I see what I've done. I'm looking at what you've got there, the way you've got the tree in front of the other trees.
Uh-huh.
So see what I've done with these trees.
Oh, okay, just let me
How
put
do
the
I-
spotlight on you. Hey, Paul, so I just put add spotlight on Jackie to,
Yeah.
okay.
You
All
see
right.
what I've got there?
Okay, hold it up again. Let me see.
Let's see, hold on.
Uh-huh.
See those big splotches of trees? And
Uh-huh.
if I go over them,
Uh-huh.
then it's gonna be muddy. I don't know what to do.
Okay, so if you're starting to make mud, is it still wet?
No. It's
Okay.
really not.
So if you have any colors or splotchy colors that are going muddy on you, what you can do, you can gently remove it by taking your brush, have a damp, clean brush, and just kind of scrub what you don't like out, and then blot it with the paper towel. And then let it dry, and then you can go over it again. But let it dry before you proceed with another layer.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You bet. Okay.
Now you can just remove the spotlight from her.
Okay. Here we go. Yeah.
Let's
Good,
see.
Paul?
Well, you removed it from your painting too, so you have to just add that again.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right. One second.
Oh my gosh. I mean, actually just putting the water over it changed it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They sort of getting the effect that you've got with that light tree in front, you know?
Yeah. Paul, can you see this okay? Is everything good?
Yep, all good.
Okay, good. Okay, good. All right. Anybody have any questions? Deborah, do you got any questions for me?
Probably too many questions. I think
Yeah, just a
one
couple.
of the things, getting the color even
Mm-hmm.
is like I'll have one place that's like really dark that I don't want.
Uh-huh.
In the sky, there like will be one side or the other that
Okay.
instead of having a nice gradation, it gets like really dark where I don't want it.
All right. I'm going to spotlight you and I want to check it out. Okay. All right, Deborah, hold it up so I can see.
I will have you know that I did not like what I was doing, so I started it again.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right.
And Yelp, see, I don't know. I don't know how you can see that because it's not showing up right.
You might have to
Yeah.
turn off your Zoom
I've-
background.
Yeah, yeah, just turn off the Zoom background for a minute. Just, yeah, because it's kind of affecting that.
Okay, so to do that, I go,
Should be on the
Video.
bottom left.
blur my background. And yeah, I completely started over.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. That's all right.
And because
Oh, I see. Okay, I see. I know exactly what's going on there.
Oh, good.
So just hold off on it. Just keep focusing on getting the rest of the painting covered. Just get everything covered. Don't worry about it right now, because when I'm done, because when we're done putting the first layer on, I'm going to show you how to take it to the next level. And what that's going to require for your sky is just another layer of paint, and I'm going to teach you a blending technique as well.
Okay.
So yeah, for right now, just don't be bothered by it. Just leave it be and just keep focusing on just getting everything blocked in. And then once we're ready to start refining and adjusting things, yeah, I'll help you with that.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
okay, you bet. Okay, right. Okay. So now, let's see, where I'm at here is, okay, yeah, so I was just adding some of the purple into the trees here. So I'm just going to get that blocked in. Oh my gosh, I could watercolor paint all day long. I really, especially when you start really seeing what you're making, you know, it's just, it's really fun. I really enjoy watercolor. Yeah, Deborah, you can even see my sky too kind of has the same, you know, issue, you know, just like as far as like a gradation goes. But yeah, don't worry, we'll cover that. Okay, and then the other thing that I'm gonna do, there's this cast shadow shape right here. I'm actually just going to make that purple for right now because it's pretty, it's pretty dark, but I just want to have some paint on there, so I'm just going to block that in. How you doing over there, Jackie?
It's interesting. Boy, it is so interesting to water on here and then blot it off. Wow.
Yeah, that's your magic trick. I mean, that's your secret. You know, if you do something in watercolor, like a mistake or something that you wouldn't want to do, you know, just remember, damp, clean brush, paper towel, blot it off.
Today's kind of like one big mistake, Robert, but it's okay.
You know, it's totally fine. You know, I have those all the time. Yeah. It's, you know, like you're always going to have, I mean, the more you do it, the less off days you will have, hopefully. But yeah, in the beginning of learning something, oh yeah, you're tripping over your shoes like every 5 seconds. It's fine. You know, yeah, but the more you practice, the less falling you'll do. But of course, we're always learning, always. That never ends. I'm still learning, you know, things when I paint. Okay, so I don't remember which student asked me, but Jackie, was it you wanted to kind of get or was it Roxana? Did you ask me how to approach these flowers in the foreground?
It was when it. Oh, okay.
Well.
Wendy also sent a message about it. She's not here, but she's gonna watch the video.
Great. Okay. So essentially I'm gonna start working on that now. So you'll just notice I'm gonna hold up the photo reference for a second. When you're dealing with something like this, you want to really simplify it as much as possible. And what I mean by that is you want to just first decide, you first want to focus on your general darks and your general lights. Just be a very black and white thinker in the beginning, just light side, dark side. You know, try not to see the details or all the other subtle colors happening within that. That will come eventually. But to get started, you want to just be very general, starting with your general darks and your general lights. I like to start with my general darks first because to me, it gives me an idea of how the environment is setting up a lot quicker versus if I just start with my brightest brights or whatever, you know. So when I look at this, when I see all of these dark flowers in shadow, essentially all of these flowers are in shadow, with the exception of a couple that have trickles of light on them. I'm looking at where you see my finger, I'm looking at the general darks first. And I could definitely get away with that by making a really deep, dark purple first. So I'm just going to mix. I mean, and if you have purple straight out of the tube, go ahead and use it if you got it. I'm going to mix some ultramarine blue, which is this dark blue here. And then I'm going to add a little bit of alizarin crimson to it. That's going to give me a deep, dark purple. I'm more concerned with getting the correct tone. So, all right, here we go. I'm going to keep using my mop brush because I think I can use my mop brush for this. So just kind of watch me and just watch how I'm going to do this. I'm just going to very liberally just kind of get some dark action happening there. Just kind of trying not to do the whole thing because you got to leave room for the pinks, but I'm just kind of liberally just kind of here and there getting some dark stuff happening there. And that about settles it. So that for the first layer. Of course, when we return, I'm going to be making these even darker because the more layers, like if you're trying to get a dark color, one layer is not going to cut it most of the time. You're usually going to have to do 2 or 3 layers to get that degree of dark that you want. So, but for right now, this will work just fine. I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes and let it dry because if I go ahead and just dive right into the pinks, everything's going to bleed together. And for this particular stuff, I want to keep the colors separate because one thing that you will notice is when you're painting landscapes, everything in the foreground, everything that's as closer to your eye, everything is very crisp. Everything is very clear. You can see everything very clearly. But as things recede back into space, things get blurry, things get cooler, things get lighter, things get softer. So for this particular landscape, I want to create just some really nice crispy texture for these flowers. So I'm just going to leave those. That's going to, in fact, if I wanted to, if I was in a hurry or whatever, or I was excited to get the other pinks on there, I could take a hair dryer to this if I wanted to and just blast a little heat on it. So I'm just gonna let that be. And as far as while that's drying, I'm looking at the bridge, and let's see here. I'm not going to do anything with the bridge right now because that bridge is detailed. But what I'm going to do is just start outlining where it is just to remind myself where it is. So I'm going to actually switch my brushes to something smaller. I'm going to take my round, let's see here. This is my round number 4 brush, okay? This is really good for just drawing straight lines and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do while that's drying, I'm just going to establish where that bridge is. And as far as the colors to make for it, I would advise you to not use pure black, right, if you have it, only because if you use ivory black or whatever black you have, it tends to be a very harsh color. I find that when you mix ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson, it gives you a color that can act as a black. It's just a little bit less harsh. I think just pure black in its out of the tube is wonderful for mixing other, it's for mixing other colors and helping with mixing colors. But using it straight out of the tube, it creates pretty harsh lines. So I'm actually going to take a very similar color to what I did with these shadows down here. And I'm just going to use that to just kind of outline the bridge. So I'm going to take some blue, take some red, just get something dark. It doesn't have to be exact right now, just as long as it's dark. And I'm just going to come over here, just start outlining where that bridge is. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just try and do your best here. Just remember too, if you don't get anything, if you don't get something right the first time, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get it, because you'll have several other chances to improve it. Just going to let that dry. I'm not going to get all the details just yet. I just want to establish the main lines of where the bridge meets.
I have to step out for a minute. Robert, Lily wants to go out. My dog.
Sure.
So you seem
Okay.
like you've got
Sure.
this under control.
That's what you think. I'm just kidding. Anybody have any questions right now?
No, I'm just eager to see how the
Oh, this?
yeah, just everything how it
Yeah.
those flowers been messing with me for a long too much. Fix it.
Okay. So yeah, this is pretty much, I think this is close. This is ready. I think this is ready to go. So, okay. Now that this is dry, let's get a color going that is very magenta. Let's see here if I have, just look into my other colors here and see if I can pull out.
I stopped drawing so that way I can watch it.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay. So now what I'm going to do for this color, I'm going to start with red. Alizarin crimson will be a good color to start with. I'm going to get some of that happening here. And then what I'm going to do is just put a little dash of blue or purple. Either one of them would work. Just a little dash in there just to kind of start getting. And if you feel like you go too dark, just add a little bit more red to that. I wish I had something a little bit more vibrant, but this is pretty close. Yeah, just use your best judgment as far as like the color of the magenta color. But basically, if you have like a bright red and just a little dash of blue, that should give you a color that's pretty similar to that. Okay, are you ready, Roxana?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I got my brush loaded, and I started with this color that I'm pointing at. I'm just going to go with something like this. It's pretty close. So then I'm just going to, like, where all those white areas are, just start applying them very similar to how you did with the shadow areas. Just kind of blot them on there. Yeah, and again, just really just try and be as expressive as you can with these different interesting brush marks. Just really kind of go a little crazy with your brush. And don't and don't forget, we're going to be coming back to this later too. So um, I'm just trying to get the general outline of what it's doing. So. So that's basically the first layer. How does that look, Roxana? Does that help you?
Yes, yes, I
Okay.
see.
Yeah. Then
I
the
see
other,
what you're trying to create.
yeah, I mean, it looks very ocean spray cranberry juicy, but it works for right now, just for the layer part of it. But if you find you want to go a little bit more on the violet side, just add a little bit more blue to it. Paul, does this look like cranberry juice?
It's beautiful.
Okay. So the final thing that I'm going to do to conclude just the first layer of paint is I'm just going to take some of my lake color that I used last week, and I'm just going to paint in between that so I don't have to go in and deal with all of it, like just, little by little later. So I'm going to I got some cerulean blue. That's what I used for the lake. And just use whatever you have though. Use whatever. If you don't have a certain color, just use the closest thing that you can to it. Okay, so then I'm just gonna go in, and this should be dry and it should cooperate. And so, yep, it's cooperating. Then one final thing before we take this to the next level is I'm going to get a stem, or excuse me, a branch to that tree so it doesn't look like it's flying into thin air. And I'm just going to take a little bit of burnt umber, brown, whatever you got. Just go ahead and put it in there. Yeah. Get a couple areas that I missed. Okay, folks. So the the entire layer of my watercolor paint, the first layer is complete. Everything's covered in. So basically, what I like to do once I have the first layer of watercolor paint on is just really step back and take a look at it, and really just examine it. And now it's time to take it. Once you do that, then it's time to take it to the next level. And what that means is really just identifying how truly light and how truly dark are the tones that you see on the photo reference. Now is the time to start refining things and adjusting things and being a little bit more picky, and the other thing too, and I notice Paul says this a lot in his teachings, is you really want to do your best to jump around at this stage, because if you get stuck in one area for too long and you fight it and fight it and fight it, it's going to end up being overworked, and then everything else is just going to kind of get the back seat. So to keep things fresh, just focus on one area of the painting at a time, and like section by section by section. Make a pass at one area, spend 10 or 15 minutes on it, and then whether it's perfect or not, move on, because this isn't a constant state of change, and you want to keep, you want to give each section, equal amount of attention for right now. So does that make sense? Okay. So to answer Deborah's question, it's kind of like starting over again, so now it's time to just really go back and just really examine it. So I'm looking at my sky, and I like it, but there's a few things that I want to do to improve upon it. I want to get kind of like what Deborah has, a gradation, a light gradually going to dark. And one of the most common mistakes that landscape painters make, is we always tend to make our skies way darker than they actually are. During the day, the sky is not as dark as we might think it is, in reality anyway, when you're doing a traditional realistic painting or whatever. So I'm pretty happy with the tone of my sky, but I just want to create some more gradation, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So I'm going to switch brushes, and I'm going to break out my my flat brush. Okay, my flat brush. I'm just going to clean up my other brushes for right now. The other thing too, if you're inclined to do it, is sometimes most times after I finish my first layer of paint, I like to wipe my palette clean completely, to just basically give myself a brand new start of color. It's another opportunity to make new colors. It's just, there's something very refreshing about it. You want to constantly do everything that you can to refresh, your work, and so if it means starting with a new palette, if it means taking a break and walking away from it, very, very valuable stuff to do when you're making art. So, and I think I'm going to do just that. I'm actually going to get rid of these colors because I'm excited to see what other kind of colors I'm going to make. So I'm going to show you how to wipe your palette clean before I start into the sky. If you have a spray bottle, I use my spray bottle a lot. What I'm going to do is, if you have a sponge, that's fine, but a paper towel will work just fine. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to give this a spritz, spray that really good. I'm going to take my paper towels and wipe that right away. I mean, you don't have to do this. I mean, if you feel, you want to hold on to some of those colors, that's fine. But it just might help, refresh your mind a little bit when you're mixing color. Okay, we're going to get to the sky in just a second. One second. All right, so for the gradation of the sky, Deborah, I'm going to show you how to get a gradation, okay? So what you need to do is you need to dip your brush in some water, make sure that it's damp, a nice damp, clean brush, and you're going to come over to where that hard line is in the sky right here, and you just want to gently, gently, gently just give it a scrub. That's going to start the blending. And as you're doing that, you can also blot it as well. Just, you saw that starting to soften, Deborah? very gently. Another thing that you can do too is if that's not working for whatever reason, you could put some just plain water with your brush and just go over your dry paper like so, and just kind of work out some of the streaks and that stuff too. Just plain water. Just make sure the brush is wet, but not super, super wet. Okay, and then I'm pretty pleased with the sky for the most part. Another thing that that I want to show you, I'm going to switch over to my number 4 round brush. A lot of these trees and bushes that are in the far foreground, I want to kind of soften the edges because uh, when you have soft edges, things appear to be further back into space. And that's what I want to incorporate when I'm doing this. And I'll show you how to do it right now. So I'm going to take a damp, clean brush, just follow me, and just this hard edge, all of these are really hard edge. I'm just going to go in there and just give it a scrub and just soften those out. Again, just try and be a little bit expressive with your brush and just try and go in different directions if you can. See that's starting to soften out.
Water.
I will say this, doing a lot of scrubbing with your brush is going to put wear and tear on your brushes, but that's okay. You know, I mean, they're meant to be used, so use the heck out of them. You can always buy new ones.
Please continue on. We're over here just mind boggled by the trees you just created.
Really?
Totally different. Yes.
Oh.
Yes. We're mad. We've been struggling. And you just did it, and yeah, that looks good.
Oh, it's these trees I'm going to leave a little harder edge because they're actually closer to us than any of these trees. So I'm going to leave those. But another thing that I'm going to do, I'm not done with the sky yet. I would like to get just one slight darker gradation in the sky on top, just so I can get, I like to have as many value variations as possible. Now, I know I haven't really discussed values with you, but values essentially just means light to dark. It's your subject's light sides and the dark sides. And the more values you can get in a drawing or a painting, the more three-dimensional they will be. So we'll cover that in another class, Paul.
Part 3.
Sounds good. Yeah, part 3.
Yeah, I'm enjoying working with you folks. Okay, so I'm going to take, you want to be a little careful. You don't want to go too dark, or I don't want to go too dark. And so what I'm going to do here is, the other thing too, feel free, if you're not sure about a color, feel free to test it before you commit to it. You know, test it on a scrap piece of paper if you like, just to kind of get an idea if it's a good fit for the whatever it is you're doing. So, okay, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to just go across with my flat brush, and I'm just going to come across like so. I have a bloom here on the left. That's going to take care of this bloom. Now, what I'm going to do, I want to leave it. I don't want to start blending it yet, because if I start blending it, it's going to disrupt the paper. So I'm just going to let that dry for a few minutes. Let that dry, and then once that dries, I'm going to blend that edge. Okay. And then that will be all I'm going to do for the sky, at least for right now. And then we're going to move on to meatier things. Deborah, how you doing over there?
Well, I think better.
Okay, yeah.
There were some things I liked from the first one
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not liking as well with this one. So there probably will be a third one somewhere along the line.
That's okay. You know, just, I mean, the other thing too, you know, I mean, these are just studies, you know, I mean, it's more about just, I mean, if you're understanding and applying the concepts, which you are, you will eventually, you know, you'll eventually get grasp it. You know, it took me, and you know this as well as I do, it took me about 100 paintings I didn't like before I got 2 that I really loved. So, but not to, I know that sounds kind of discouraging, but you know, it's just, you know, you will eventually, you know, get it. It's just, it's when you're new to something, it's, you know, it takes a little bit. Okay, so I think this is pretty workable now. It might be still a little wet, but I'm gonna try and work with it anyway. And we'll just see what happens. Let's see. Damp, clean brush. Oh yeah, that's working. See that? Now I can just get some nice gradation in that flat in the sky. Yeah, and you definitely do want to have nice gradual gradations in the sky, but you know, it might take you a couple swipes and a couple runs of blending to do it, but that's okay. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that sky alone for now. I might come back to it later, might not, but it's so far I'm pretty happy with it. It's not bad. It's not the most perfect thing in the world, but it will work. Yeah, like I said, I've probably said this before, but I'm going to say it again. You know, if you're working on something and it's not working out for whatever reason, just leave it alone. It's gonna, just leave it alone and move on to something else, because it's going to be very tempting for you to just kind of chisel and chisel and chisel and chisel away at it. But instead, just leave it alone for a while. Okay, so I'm going to come back to these two trees right here in the right in front here. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to get some darker values in here. I'd like to get a couple different values happening in these trees. So I'm going to take, I'm going to go back into my purple. And the other thing too is I'm using thicker watercolor paint than I did in the first layer. I'm being, just more consistent to the whole melt that I told you about. I'm going to come in here and just kind of watch how I'm going to handle these darker values. You want to be very careful, but you just want to kind of liberally get just go in here and just get some watercolor happening, just get some dark stuff happening there. You're not trying to bury everything that you've already put down. You're trying to add more information to it. More information being more color variation, more value variation. If there's drawing issues that you still want to work through, you can also adjust those too. So I'm just going to start with that. Now I'm going to take a damp, clean brush again, and I'm just going to kind of feather those darks around a little bit. Just kind of get a sense of some shadow happening in there. Right. Now, I want to see about getting some lights happening in these trees, because I have some good darks happening in there. I got some good mid-tones happening in there. Now I want to show you how to bring out some of the lights, and I want you all to just kind of look at this just to see how I handle this, okay? So let's say I wanted to get some lights happening in these trees. So I'm going to take my damp, clean brush and just scrub in some areas, then blot like that. So you basically get some of that light source happening here through some of your scrubbing. It's going to be easier for me to blot it when my paper towel's actually folded. Okay, so a little bit more dark in some areas. Trying to do everything that I can to make sure that both of these trees aren't exactly the same height. I'm trying to make one a little bit smaller than the other, just so it's more interesting. You always want to keep that in mind too when you're doing landscapes. You never want to have two trees be the same height. You want to have variation because all trees are different. Okay, I'm gonna leave those guys alone. Now I'm gonna revisit some of these other trees that are happening in the foreground or in the background. And I'm noticing that there is a lot of yellow muted colors happening. And this is just kind of a bunch of green stuff. And I wanna kind of add some more yellow, kind of similar to what's going on in the photograph, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to dip into my yellow ochre color, which is a nice earthy, almost mustard, French mustard color. So it looks something like that, right? Make sure I get plenty of that on my palette. And I'm just gonna do a very light whisper of red into there. That's gonna create a very similar color to what's going on right there. Almost orange color. So just gonna come in here and just kind of add some variation here and there. Just add some of that color. You know, and if there's other colors of trees you want to put in the background that are not in the photograph, feel free to do it. You know, feel free to be as creative as you want with it. Now, same thing for the way I handled these larger trees. I'm going to bring some of the lights out. I'm not going to bring too many darks in here because these trees are far away. And so if we get too dark in this particular area, it's going to go flat. So I'm going to try and avoid putting anything. I'm not going to put anything darker than what I already have in these trees, but I'm going to bring some lights into the situation. So I'm going to, again, just scrub, blot, scrub, blot, scrub, blot. I'm also actually kind of in the mood to have some more purple accents in this area too, just for fun. Kind of here and there. Of course, I went a little too dark, but that's okay. If you do find that you go a little too dark, you can add some water to the color and that will lighten the color. And there's also some bleeding effects going on in my painting right now, and I'm actually okay with that because these trees are somewhat blurred anyway. So little mystery back there. Tone it down a little bit. A lot of this work that you do when you're a painter, not just with with watercolor, but even with oils and acrylic, it's almost a game of add and subtract. After a while, you add some, you take some off, you add some, you take some off a couple times. All right, so I'm pretty satisfied with that for the most part. Okay, so now for some of these paint flowers that are happening in the background, and I'm just gonna pretty much I like the first layer that I put on, but I want to add more. I just kind of want to add, oops, it's a little too dark. I want to add another layer just to kind of refine things and polish it up. I just made a huge mistake, so I'm going to show you how to correct that. I painted over here and I didn't want to do that, so I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to scrub that out and then I'm going to blot it and goodbye. For these flowers that are in the far background, I'm kind of just treating them as little dots too, because if they're pretty far away, so I want to give the illusion that they're farther away than the ones that are in the actual foreground. Now for these flowers right here that are getting right next to the tree that I'm working on right now, I'm actually going to I'm feeling like putting a little bit of violet into the bottom. That way it will just kind of give the illusion that they're on the ground. See that? Same thing over here. You can just kind of a little bit of violet happening. Oops. Okay, now I want to show you something. I want to show you something completely new. You'll notice that in this photograph, this lawn right here in the far background, it actually has some accents of light in it, and it has more light on the photo than I have in my painting. And so now I want to show you how to get some light happening on that lawn. So I'll show you how I'm going to handle that. And this will also help take care of any blooms or anything that you have in that area. Sure. I have it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a damp, clean brush again, and I'm just going to scrub just little patches out, not the whole thing, but just little patches of it. And see how we're already starting to get some light happening. Scrub and blot. And then I'll put a little light over here. Again, scrub and blot. And then kind of soften some of the edges if you need to. Actually, just for a little bit of variation, what I'm going to do too is I'm just going to hit a couple darker accents in this area too. See that? Just get a little bit more variation. Okay, we're going to work on the water in a minute, but before I do that, I just want to go a little bit darker in that area right here, just because it's actually darker than what I have it. So I'm going to add some dark green to that. I like that color. I'm just going to hit it in a few other areas too. So color and harmony. Okay, as far as the water goes, now, like I mentioned a couple weeks ago in our first workshop, the color of the water is going to all depend on the sky. If it's a blue sunny day, the water is going to be blue. If there's overcast, it's going to be silver, gray, silver. So for this, I'm just going to start with this backwater. When I look at the photo reference, there's a couple things going on. It appears to get lighter it's lighter all the way in the way back. And as the water gets closer to that bridge, you see how it gradually gets darker. So I'm going to dip into my lake color that I mixed. Again, that cerulean blue, whatever blue you have. And I'm just going to get a little bit darker as it gets closer to the bridge. I'm going to leave the far back alone. How's everybody's paper holding up? Is the watercolor cooperating with your paper?
My paper's suffering a little.
It's okay. Yeah, it's you know, as long as you're delicate about it, it should be okay. It will survive.
This one is not destined for the museum, so I think it will be fine.
Oh, I'm sure it looks great, Jackie. Okay, so basically I just added some dark to that. Now, what I'm gonna do, kind of similar to how I showed you with the blending, I'm just going to very, very delicately just blend the hard edges away. Something like that. And then if you want to take lighter colors out of your water, you remember just kind of how I did with that lawn, you can just kind of scrub it out and blot it if you need to. And moving forward, I'm going to just keep going down where I'm going to get in between the bridge. Okay, now while that's drying, I'm going to come over to where this grass is over here and basically give it the same treatment that I gave this lawn over here. I'm just going to I'm going to pull out a couple slivers of light. And just add maybe a little bit of variety of just adding a little bit more green in some places. And so now I'm going to come over to the lake over here, and I'm just going to start touching up some of the values. I'm going to make the water darker in the areas that it's darker and lighter in the areas where it's lighter. And the second layer is taking care of some blooms that I had from last session. I noticed that the water over here kind of turns brown, and I really don't care for that. So I want to make it blue because right now this water kind of looks like sewage, unfortunately. So I'm going to just, instead of making it brown, I'm just going to continue the dark blue over here instead. So. Got to be really careful with this because that's a lot of watercolor paint right here. And I want to pull some lights out from this area, but I'm going to actually let that dry, I think, before I proceed with getting some of these other lights that are so close to this water. So now I think now's as good time as any to come back to where we originally started, which is this tree right here. And basically what this tree needs is it just needs more variation. It just needs a little bit more definition. And so I'm just going to do that with a variation of different greens. Just kind of try and mix a good amount of dark greens, light greens, mid-tone greens. So kind of play with that a little bit.
You have about 1 minute left.
Yeah.
It got real quiet there. Everyone must have
I
been
know.
concentrating.
No. I want to know what happens with the bridge.
Yeah. So basically, when it comes to the bridge, just simplify it as much as possible, but save that for very, very last. Just save it for last. It's like the cherry on the cake. It does not have to. I mean, I'm not saying this is like the most perfect bridge in the world or anything like that. I could probably fine tune it a little bit, but
How would you fine tune it?
um let's see. I would probably get some of the lighter accents in there, like the posts. Maybe I could try just doing one right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, I'll have to wait till it tries. But
Okay, but that's what you would kind of do to it though.
yeah, and the other thing too is when you're dealing with that kind of stuff like bridges and stuff like that, try and handle it with as much care as possible, but don't overwork it, just try and, do the best that you can with it, handle it with care, and just one section of it at a time. Like, at first it seems overwhelming because there's like a lot of different railings and stuff like that. But when I really studied it, it's basically just a bunch of X's going across, So I just kind of simplified it that way, I guess. But,
So
yeah.
Are you gonna
I would
finish it up?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go
Well,
ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say, are you gonna finish it off and then post it, or are we gonna have another session where you finish it? Because I want to see the ending.
Really?
I do.
Yeah. Well, gosh, that's a good question. Let me think on it. Let me talk to Paul.
We'll email you and let you know.
Yeah, because I have two options. I can just basically take this in and finish it off, or if you guys are.
Yeah, if you finish it off, I just want to at least see the ending.
Oh, of course. Of course. I mean, this painting's dedicated to y'all,
Okay, awesome.
So Robert, what I would really appreciate is an honest critique. I mean, I've got what I've got, but I would love for you, I'd love a part 3. So whatever the finish off is, and then you would give us critique and help me understand what else I need to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I would love to do that. I'd be happy to do that for all of you. Yeah, let me discuss it with Paul and we will put our heads together and make a plan. I would like to see all of your work before I sign off though. So
yeah, I'm gonna switch this to the gallery view again so we can see everyone. One idea that we've been talking about is maybe starting just like a weekly watercolor class with Robert, or like a weekly series where you could get together and work with him on whatever you're working on, and he could give you feedback and that kind of thing. And then also we've been talking about starting a Facebook group for Art Makes Us, where all of the participants can share work and get feedback from each other. So that's two things that we have in mind. But definitely like email us if you have requests, or if there's a certain type of class you would like to do with Robert. Like with the reason we did this one today is because Jackie requested a part 2. So we're very open to your input and want to give you the types of classes that you want. So just let us know.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for requesting a part 2. It made my day to hear that all of you wanted a part 2.
Yeah,
so
it was great.
Yeah.
Great job.
So before we go, let me just see, can I see the paintings from y'all?
Oh, nice.
Jackie, that's gorgeous.
Oh, wow, that is really nice.
But it needs a lot of work, and I would just love your professional eye to give an honest critique. Thank you.
I can do that for you. Okay. Yeah.
That's okay. It's not we got this.
Oh,
awesome.
Oh, that is so bright. I love it. It's got such a nice warm Oh,
And it's
wow.
free.
This one's mine.
That's beautiful.
This is the second one that I did.
This is beautiful. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, but it's all muddy up here. And
It's okay. Again, like
yeah,
I told
when you see
Jackie,
the flowers.
yeah, like I told
I like
Jackie,
those.
if you get any muddiness, just damp brush, scrub it, and blot it out. So,
Okay.
Great.
okay, Deborah, can I see yours?
Am going, I gave it up as a bad job. I'm going to start over again.
Oh, are you sure?
Yeah, it's, what did I do with it actually? Now I didn't throw it away, but I turned it,
said you said-
over to start it over, and yeah, it's yeah.
Let me see.
This is honestly how it turned out. So
Raise it up
I'm
just a
going to
little
go
bit more.
to part to a third try.
If you want to do, that's absolutely fine. And again, it's just it might take a couple tries, but yeah, just enjoy it. And it's more about just progress than perfection right now.
Well,
So
I am totally enjoying it because, like most people get with singing, they stay in the back because you can't sing. I got that with art,
mhm.
big time. So this is like doing something completely different,
Mhm.
just to enjoy.
I'm glad you're with us, and just stay with us for more because yeah, we love having you. So
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
thank you everybody so much. We'll be in touch, and I'll see all of you very soon. So
Hey, thank you.
all right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye all.
Thank you everybody. Bye.
Thank you.